Welcome to another episode of the Sports Business Leaders Podcast. I'm here with a very exciting guest, Ryan DePaul. Thanks for coming on, Ryan.
Hey, Justin, thanks for having me, man.
Yes, sir. So, Ryan is the founder of the A7FL, which is one of the most innovating and exciting football leagues in the United States, offering a helmet free, pad free version of full contact football known as American Sevens. Ryan founded the A7FL about 10 years ago. He's been in the space for about 20 years, and they officially launched in 2015 with a mission to reimagine football, making it safer, faster, and more fan friendly while preserving the intensity of the sport. To get things started, Ryan, so you've built a league from the ground up and it spans the country and it attracts a wide variety of fans. What have you learned about building a loyal audience in today's sports landscape?
I think it's, mostly the excitement. People want to, first find us through highlights on Instagram and social media. They see the big hits and the amazing plays that are happening without pads. And, they right away recognize, hey, this is, regular football. They can identify with it. But then, is it rugby? Is it football? And they really get curious about it. And most of them can identify, they've played this format somewhere along the line in their life. So, like I mentioned before, it's grassroots American football at the elite level, um, and connecting with this audience in all those ways, like they've played this way before, they appreciate the rugby spot, the style, and they're kind of shocked by the no pads, and our fans love it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And just coming from a football background myself, thinking about how I played it growing up with just my friends, you're completely right. It's grassroots football at the elite level. And watching a lot of your highlights, you have some top talent in there, guys that probably have played in college or could even play at the next level. There's some legit talent, and it's pretty exciting to see what you guys have there talent wise.
It's probably one of the most exciting things about our league is the guys that play in it. And another thing is I always say this is kind of like the American Idol of football. These aren't the guys that, made it to the NFL or played 2 years in college and are now coming back to play in another league or something like that. These are the guys that their path got cut short somewhere along the line, whether they had kids in college or they had to get a job to support family members or grades or whatever have you. This is the outlet where they actually come, and get their second shot to show the world, their skill set in football. So they're really the, diamonds in the rough that people don't know about. But the question always comes up like, how the hell didn't the NFL or a Division I college team see this guy?
Yeah, that's great, Ryan. Really appreciate you coming on the show. I mean, the A7FL is a great example of what I've been paying a lot of attention to, and it kind of fits into the emerging sport or like a hybrid sport. Still, like it's its own narrative in terms of football, but 7-on-7. I love how you say call it. The grassroots American football at an elite level, especially with the no pads aspect. So it's kind of got like a rugby crossover. But emerging sports are fascinating to me. You have what's going on in basketball with Unrivaled, 3v3 or 1v1 for a traditional basketball game that's 7-on-7. And of course, Unrivaled is only women, or even just like flag football and all the attention. Again, it's like a hybrid version of what we've been watching for years. Even though flag used to be in the Olympics long ago in the 30s, it's coming back soon. What we see in golf, like, the emerging sports lane is like really interesting right now. So I'm curious if you, whether it be walking us down memory lane when you guys got started, or what it's like building an emerging sport and league today. Like, love to hear any insights or what that experience been like. Some lessons for people who are in that emerging sport lane.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, initially, I never intended for this to be an emerging sport or anything. This was just because I was desperate to still play football. If you were a basketball player, you can go down the street and get a pickup game of basketball. Maybe you could play tennis with your wife. But if you were a football player and you were still looking for that contact, you couldn't get it in flag. Semi-pro is kind of whatever it is at this point. But, this was just because I really wanted to play football at first. And then I saw like, there's tons of guys that were just like me that still wanted to play this game. And all of a sudden the attention started to come behind it once we started posting clips on YouTube and Barstool Sports posted about us. And my partner and co-founder, high school buddy of mine, was watching this all happen and was amazed by the growth and the attention around it. And that's when we came together and rebranded under A7FL in 2015. So people that are getting into emerging sports today, you know, I don't know that they'd start the same way where they played this sport at first because they loved it and realized other guys love it, and then they turned it into a commercialized sport. So I think it's a little different for us how we came up. I guess, my advice to them would be to not be gimmicky. Come up with something that's authentic, maybe something that people have played before. Like, even pickleball is a good example. It's like a variable of tennis or in ping pong a little bit, but it's pretty easy for people to play, and that all works. But we're kind of different in how we came up, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And just thinking about how you guys have started from your own experiences. You started it from a need that you had yourself. And I think that's how the best, especially in sports, and really this can go across technology, emerging leagues, what have you. I think the best businesses come from those organic sources where you're not trying to start something, but it just naturally comes out of a need. So just thinking about that one step further and how as over the past 10 years, the A7FL has continued to capture more and more attention with the viral highlights that you've been talking about with Barstool Sports and ESPN and a growing fan base across all those different platforms. How do you approach fan engagement more so as like a long-term relationship, just like the NFL would have, for example, with people that come back year after year after year who almost associate themselves as fit, like an Eagles fan or a Cowboys fan, for example?
Yeah, and that's, one of the most challenging parts because, we've gone viral so often on social media. People love our game. And I always say we're kind of like a trending sport in that aspect. Everybody loves our highlights, but how do we create sticky fans? Guys and girls that are going to come back because of a certain player they're following or a certain team, or maybe they're having some debates over stats or whatever, whatever the case. And that's something that we're touching on a lot this year. We have our In Motion show where we're featuring our players and their stats and their highlights and accounting for them. And it's, you're starting to see now our social growing because of it, because they're starting to identify with the players and they're starting to become fans of these certain teams. And that's all transpiring to, more views for our live games on Sunday. Um, and we play in this sweet spot. There's no great, let's be real, there's no great football in the spring that we've seen. We've seen so many leagues come in and out. Everybody's trying to get a piece of the spring football market because it's so valuable. People go through the football withdrawals. It's the same pitch. I've seen 10 leagues come and go, probably 12 leagues come and go since I've been in this business. But the A7FL, man, it's just different. And, the audience is growing and people love it. So this type of football in the spring, during a time when there's no other football really to watch that people love, I think it's just the perfect storm. And we're really capitalizing on it this year.
Yeah, man. And Ryan, something that you mentioned a couple of minutes ago, right after looking at like that spring void for the sport. I love the other analogy you have, the American Idol of football. We talked about this when we first met you, but I've been studying the reemergence of popularity in F1, and a lot of it was around like the personalities of the drivers and the fanhood around the drivers, regardless of like how good they were, where people showed up and watched the broadcast and wanted to participate in the sport just because they had these favorite drivers. So I know you have a couple examples of players that like really have done a good job with their own personal brands, and you were talking about a couple. I don't know if you have a few examples of some of your players who have done this really well. Got any shout outs for them? Or I think there's really something there in terms of your growth and them building their own individual fan bases. So I'm curious what insights you have there.
Yeah, it's a new era from when I first started. And imagine, in 2006, we had MySpace and Craigslist, and that's how we were structuring and organizing and building the league. Today, these guys do have a personal brand, and they're able to, kind of amplify that brand through A7FL and getting the recognition. And a lot of it, believe it or not, has to do with these guys are recognizable because they don't have helmets on. You see their face, they run up to the end zone cameras. So I think I mentioned this to you guys before. Like, for example, one of our star returners, and we'll get into the 3-on-1 at some point, Jason Sissone, he has a cleat business where he customizes his own cleats. He actually has some kind of sponsorship with Nike where they send him the blanks and he's able to customize them and sell them. And he's got his fifth kid on the way. And he's an amazing football player. But you'll see, like, these guys are either collabing with us on social or we're tagging them and it's, driving the audience and people are, I have guys come with me all the time like, hey, man, I was down the shore this year in Seaside, and I have people recognizing me on the boardwalk. You know, so from where we were with MySpace and Craigslist to now, these athletes and their social media presence is important to them. They understand the value in it, and they're young, 22, 23. Um, so they're just starting to understand, I think, how to cash in on some of the values of being recognized in A7 and that, transferring over to the social following.
Yeah, and that's really the name of the game, especially with today's world with the NIL space booming and everybody having their own personal brand, especially it really is early in high school as a sophomore, junior, senior in high school. Those guys are starting to develop their own personal brands that early on. And it's only going to get bigger and bigger. So I think you guys are definitely on the right direction with going in that route towards amplifying the people and making sure that they all have their own personal brands that are recognizable in the sport. So great, Ryan. Thanks so much again for everything today. Any last words you would want to share with the audience today?
Yeah, if you haven't already, checked this out, you can go over to a7fl.com and see our schedule and some highlights and learn about some of the players and the history here. But I think you'll enjoy the game. I appreciate you guys having me and being able to speak to the audience about this. And that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Ryan. Really appreciate you being on today, and best of luck as you guys just kicked off the season and continuing the rest of the year.
Awesome. Thanks, fellas. Appreciate it.
Thank you.